Hey guys, Mr. Kreider here. Looking at my Google Classroom this morning, I noticed that I didn't post this video, so let's get right to it. The king's daughter gave Jason a magic potion that had the power to protect whoever was anointed with it from harm by either swords or fire. And then she told him just what he must do to overcome the fierce bulls and the armed men. After she left him, he paced up and down the seashore for a long time, thinking about Medea and about the tasks the morrow would bring. On the next morning, all the people of Colchis went in a great crowd to the field where Jason was to meet his death, as they thought. In the midst of them sat King Aeetes, with Medea at his right hand. In all that vast crowd, she was the only one who dared to hope that Jason would be successful. As soon as Jason entered the field, the two bulls came snorting and bellowing toward him. If you could have seen the creatures, you would have believed, as all the people did, that Jason's last hour had come. They were great, ugly creatures with hoofs of brass and horns pointed with iron. As they came trampling along, making the ground tremble at each step, their brazen hoofs, they breathed out curling flames from their nostrils so that the fields and the air itself seemed to be on fire. But Jason did not feel the heat of the flames, thanks to Medea's magic potion. He went up close to the angry creatures and, seizing them by the horns, dashed their heads quickly together until the bulls were stunned. Then he swiftly slipped the yoke over their heads. The bulls were now as gentle as cows, and Jason plowed the 4 acres in straight ridges and furrows. Next, he was given a sack of a dragon's teeth. And he sowed these teeth on the left and the right in the soil he had just turned up. In less time than it takes to tell, a mass of helmets began to show above the ground, just as the little leaves pierce through the soil in the springtime. But whereas the leaves are followed by pretty blossoms, these helmets covered a very ugly crop of fierce, armed soldiers who leaped out of the furrows, all furious for battle, and all rushed to slay Jason. Remembering Medea's advice, he picked up a large stone and threw it into their midst, which caused each of the soldiers to think that his neighbor had thrown the stone. They turned their attention away from Jason, and instead they turned upon each other with their spears and their swords. In a few minutes they were all fighting and struggling in a confused mass, and they fought so fiercely that in a short time the field was strewn with the dead of bodies who had sprung up from the dragon's teeth. Of course, the people all rejoiced at Jason's success, but the king looked angry and sullen. That's my sullen look. He knew very well that Jason could not have succeeded except by the aid of magic, and he suspected that in some way Medea had helped this stranger. Therefore, when Jason asked for leave to begin his third task, the king answered that he had done enough for one day and he should rest until tomorrow. But that evening, Medea, who could see that her father suspected her, came to Jason and told him that he must kill the dragon that very night and then sail for home. She said that she feared her father would put her to a cruel death, and that he had planned for some harm to befall the Argonauts as well. She gave Jason a drug that would put the dragon to sleep, and Jason made his way alone into the dark forest. He had not gone far when he noticed a golden light among the forest trees, and he knew that he must be near the treasure he was seeking. So he went along carefully, and when he came within sight of the dragon, he doused his spearhead with the magic drug, and he cast his spear with a mighty throw, just as Chiron had taught him years ago. The point embedded itself in one of the dragon's eyes, and the beast hissed and roared so loudly that all the people in Colchis were shaken from their beds. Soon the drug took effect, and the wounded dragon lay down fast asleep. Now Jason climbed up on the neck of the beast, and he hewed off its head with one mighty stroke of the sword. And he seized the golden fleece from the branches of the sacred oak tree where it hung, shining like a golden dawn cloud, and he hurried then back to the ship. The Argonauts were very glad to see him, and Jason, taking Medea in his arms and carrying her aboard the Argo, called for the anchor to be lifted and the sails unfurled at once. The ship slowly began to pull away just as the people of Colchis came running down to the shore, and they launched volleys of arrows out into the bay, but these were deflected by the shields of the Argonauts, and soon the ship was far out to sea, heading toward home, carrying the golden fleece. After a long and hard journey, filled with even more adventures, they at last reached their homeland. Jason banished his uncle from the kingdom and set his father back on the throne. Thus he fulfilled his vow, and the Argonauts had shown that there truly were heroes still alive in the land. As for King Aeson, he had grown young again because of all his happiness at his son's return, and he ruled his kingdom in peace for many, many years. A few words more. The Greeks placed great value on wisdom and in those who were wise, like Chiron. Although he was of half-human race of monsters, he was given the care and training of the land's royal children. Sophos was the Greek word for wise, and we can see it still in our modern words, philosopher, one who loves wisdom, and sophisticated, cultured, wisely. It can also be seen in combination with its Greek opposite, moros. Moros, which meant fool. One who is a wise fool might know only part of what true wisdom requires, and so would know just enough to get himself in trouble. Does this description seem to remind you of the word sophomore? All right. Finish up the assignment by Monday morning, and you have the weekend to do it if you didn't get it done already. Thanks so much. Coronavirus delendus est.